from the last hearing, in the question of confidential funds, it all points to two people po. In the case of DepEd, at least, it's pointing to the SDO and the head of agency, in which case that would be Mr. Fajarda and then Secretary Duterte. And of course, for the OVP, well, although interestingly, based on our last hearing, it actually was pointed to three people. If we recall the testimony of Attorney Sanchez, she actually mentioned that based from her knowledge, the persons who would have knowledge of this confidential funds would be the SDO, si Ms. Acosta, the head of agency, which is VP Duterte, and the chief of staff, Ms. Zuleika Lopez. So in line with this, just to clarify, I'd like to ask a few questions po, no, kay Attorney Lopez, to the Honorable Chairman. Attorney Lopez, nabanggit po yung pangalan po ninyo last hearing. Just to refresh your memory, I'm sure at the time you were busy po with your personal concerns. We were asking si Attorney Sanchez po and si Ms. Ville del Rey about the processes within the OVP and the disbursement of the confidential funds. And it was mentioned, I believe, specifically by Attorney Sanchez, what we've established, at least with Ms. Ville del Rey, is that wala po silang kinalaman sa disbursement ng confidential funds. Ang alam lang po ng chief accountant is the requirements and that they would have to submit for the release of the check. And kasama rin po dito si Attorney Sanchez. However, Attorney Sanchez, I believe, made that statement that past that point, and what we've established with the Land Bank, the personalities involved with the confidential funds would be the SDO, the VP, and yourself. However, we take note po, Ms. Lopez, to the Honorable Chairman, most respectfully, na binanggit po ninyo that you're only concerned with operations. And by operations, you're talking, I guess, about the social amelioration program ng Office of the Vice President. Is that correct, Ms. Lopez?
That is correct, Your Honor. That is my role as Undersecretary and Chief of Staff of the Office of the Vice President.
Ms. Lopez, I hope you Attorney Lopez, I hope you understand how we would find that quite confusing, because generally the idea of a chief of staff would be second to the head of the agency, and by virtue of that, everyone else in that department would be under the chief of staff. Generally, that's how it works. Our understanding is that in the OVP, how many USEC positions are there? May we ask?
There's only one Undersecretary position, Your Honor.
And the undersecretary position is that of the chief of staff, correct?
That is correct.
So generally, including the SDO, although they have specific responsibilities under the circular regarding to the confidential funds, they are still under your supervision as the USEC.
The SDOs, Your Honor, do not report to me.
They don't report to you, although you are the most senior official after the Vice President in the...
Your Honor, if I may be allowed to, Sir Congressman Gutierrez, if I may be allowed to explain my answer. In the Office of the Vice President, although I am the Undersecretary and the Chief of Staff, I am purely handling, as I mentioned, operational concerns. There are areas, for example, that I am not privy to. One of which is the matter of confidential expenses. But as regards the institutionalization of the projects, implementation of the projects, communications that come through the office, internal, issuances of memo, issuances of special orders, etc., they go through me. And also, for external communications, Your Honor, for example, there is a request for referral to for example, the DSWD or the Department of Health. All these matters, Your Honor, are coursed to the Office of the Chief of Staff. And all communications emanate also from the Office of the Chief of Staff, external, especially to those national government agencies. On top of that, Your Honor, I handle the day-to-day operations of, there is a clustering in the Office of the Vice President. For example, as in the case of Director Lynn, she handles the finance cluster, which is budget, accounting, GSD, no? It's under you. The procurement. That is her AOR. On my end, Your Honor, I handle the frontline delivery of administrative support such as Disaster Operations Center, Legal Affairs Division, and also the protocol team. Those are matters that I have direct hand into and information I am privy to. So yun lang po yung aking areas of concern. And there are areas actually in the Office of the Vice President, katulad, for example, let me just cite, if you allow me, sir, the matter of the appointments or the scheduling of the courtesy calls, etc., on the Vice President. Although it may be true that high-ranking officials call me and say na, Yusek, attorney, confirm mo naman yung aming appointment with the Vice President. This is something that I have no say, direct say to, because this is all done by the appointments team. In the same manner, the protocol team of the Vice President, although all the members of the diplomatic corps call me as the head of the agency, as the highest official, and as the chief of staff, it does not guarantee them that there will be a scheduled courtesy call, because these are matters that are determined purely on that end. So it's if I think it's a compartmentalized kind of setup, Your Honor, that there are only certain functions and tasks that I am privy to. In which case, that is the one that I have mentioned earlier. But although I would wish to answer really respectfully as regards the matter of the confidential expenses, it is something that I have not really been privy to from the very beginning. So, in the case of the earlier questions by General Ako, Congressman Akop rather, it is something that I cannot really answer because I am not privy to the disbursement, utilization, nor liquidation of the confidential funds. So, ganun po siya, Your Honor. That is how it is run in the Office of the Vice President.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Attorney Lopez. Well, I only mentioned
Thank
that
you.
because it was the words of Attorney Sanchez that mentioned that you would probably be privy to the disbursement. I think it would be understandable. It would be an understandable statement on the part of Attorney Sanchez because the general understanding of a chief of staff
Okay.
and being the sole USEC of that agency,
Yes.
there would be an understanding that there would be certain that you would have overall supervision. Well, in relation to the SDOs and in line with the circular, we also understand that they have specific responsibilities only to them. But we can't help but be puzzled po, no? And I understand you're telling us now that it's compartmentalized, but still we would think that generally the head of the agency would course things through you. Although necessarily separate yung sa issue ng disbursement of the SDO, wouldn't other matters regarding the SDO, for example, administrative or human resources or logistics-wise, are they not coursed through you in relation to SDO? Because if I'm understanding it correctly, the job of the SDO would also entitle a lot of travel. As you've pointed out earlier, I mean, we've seen that maraming travel orders po ang ating SDO to the point na wala rin po siya today on the because of official travel po, no? So, in relation to that, there's a lot of intermingling pa rin. Although you might say compartmentalized, there are a lot of things that would go through you. I would understand the travel orders are signed by the assistant chief of staff right now only because you were gone for the longest time. But generally, you would be signing off on the travel orders of the SDO. Would that be a fair statement?
Your Honor, I do not sign off on the travel orders of certain officials, or in this case, the SDO. May I just confirm kung sino lang yung pwede kong pirmahan na travel authority? Just sa ODUs, ba? Oh. In my case, Your Honor, in the case of the Office of the Vice President, I can only sign off on the travels of Directors Lynn Sanchez and Director Baloro, who is the Director for Operations. All the other travel authorities, I do not sign off on them. It is HR. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, Attorney Lopez, you're
Yes.
telling us now that even sa pag-sign ng travel orders, may clustering pa po kayo. You are only authorized to issue travel orders for these two officials, and then everyone else has different parang boss. Ganun po ba yung sistema sa OPP? I hope you'd understand the confusion because we were presented before an organization and it all seemed to be like a pyramid, downstream lahat. Although there are clusters, everything's under you. But now we're seeing that there are limits to your responsibility. Are we understanding this correctly?
Your Honor, in the Office of the Vice President, we have a certain delegation of authority. There's only certain papers or documents that get into the Office of the Chief of Staff. And there are also others that go directly to the Office of Director Sanchez as well as the Office of Director for Operations.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Lopez, could you please guide us through also? Ano po yung ibang clusters? I think you mentioned financial, appointment, protocol, operations, of course, is what you're in charge of. What are the other clusters so that we have an idea? So, in line with that, Attorney Lopez, so what you're saying now is confirming what Attorney Poa told us earlier. That if you take a deeper look into the OVP, napaka-compartmentalized. He used the same term actually. It's very compartmentalized sa OVP. So you are affirming that now po?
Yusek Poa said,
Na compartmentalized po yung OVP. Sometimes, what the left hand does, the right hand doesn't know. Parang what si Attorney Poa, while spokesperson, should be expected to know the ins and outs of the office. Because precisely as spokesperson, he will be relaying this information to the public. When we were asking him, he said compartmentalized po. He does not know about confidential funds. So you now, as the chief of staff, you are now confirming ng OVP po, despite the hierarchy that we see in the official organization chart, napaka-compartmentalized pala po yung OVP.
yes, that is correct, Your Honor. I can only speak for my experience as the Chief of Staff. I cannot really speak for Attorney Poa because there are certain areas in the OVP that I have no information on, or I cannot really have a direct hand on how it all operates. Your
So,
Honor.
Mr. Chair, in the operation of the OVP, rather than the usual hierarchy where it's a pyramid, where you have the large base with information or data or operations, which passes information upwards to select supervisors, upwards again to director level, ASEC, USEC, and finally to the VP. You're telling us now that the OVP operates in a hub and spoke type of situation wherein the OVP is central and then direct na lang po siya to the different. For example, OVP direct kay spokesperson, direct kay chief of staff, direct kay Attorney Sanchez for operating different clusters. And each cluster doesn't know what the other is doing.
I can only answer, Your Honor, on my role as the Chief of Staff.
Yes, sorry, and I'll just add to that point. And I understand you can only speak as the chief of staff because what you're telling us now is that you have been compartmentalized only as the chief of staff. So now you're telling me what I'm trying to present now, and if you would agree with that, is that the VP is very hands-on but treats you separately. So there's like I said, the hub and spoke. The VP is in the center, and she deals directly with Attorney Poa for other matters which you might not know, then directly with you for Chief of Staff of Operations for matters that only you know, directly to Attorney Sanchez for matters that only the finance would know, and you don't coordinate with each other.
There are cases, Your Honor, that is, in my experience, that is the case. For example, in the case of the spokesperson, it is not something that I am also privy to. The instructions for the OVP spokesperson. It happens, Your Honor, that way.
Thank you. I think this will be more, the compartmentalization of the OVP will be more relevant as we go on. But I'll just go back and focus on the SDOs. Thank you very much, Attorney Lopez.
Okay, thank
So
you.
yun po, we had an idea, although Attorney Sanchez mentioned that 3 persons were involved with the SDO. It seems to be narrowed down po, no? It looks to be, like with the DepEd, it's 2 people. We have SDO Gina Acosta and the head of agency, which is the Vice President. So, para sa kalaman po ng lahat, yung joint circular, it dictates there that the SDO is personally tasked with the disbursement and liquidation of confidential funds. And the head of agency is personally tasked to oversee. So what Attorney Lopez has told us now, by excusing herself or by separating herself from the operations of the confidential fund, it now affirms what is in the joint circular. It is down to these 2 people. And in other words, yung SDO po yung inaatasan ng batas natin na humawak at siguraduhin mapunta ang confidential funds sa naayon na confidential expenses. So this is all in line with the circular.